Hi, I'm Pat Zietlow Miller, and I write books for kids. This is the time of year when a lot of people think about all the things that they're grateful for. And I want to talk today about one thing in my life I'm particularly grateful for: public libraries. I grew up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and one of my most vivid memories as a child is of walking the 3 blocks from my house to where the bookmobile came once a week. I'd check out as many books as I possibly could, go home, read them, come back the next week, and do it again. When I got a little older, I could take the city bus to the main branch downtown, and I'd do the same thing: check out as many books as possible, come home, read them, and then do it again. Libraries made me a reader. I was a quiet kid, I was a curious kid, and I read everything you could possibly imagine. I read fiction, I read nonfiction, I read memoir, I read magazine articles. I read things that were very appropriate for my chronological age at the time, and looking back, I read things that maybe weren't so much. But I was fortunate because I had parents and librarians who always encouraged me to make my own choices, to read what seemed right to me, and to learn and grow and ask questions as I needed to. And I am so grateful for that. I read books for their stories. Books helped me see what life might look like outside of Oshkosh, Wisconsin, something that as a kid I didn't have a lot of exposure to. They helped me see different possible futures. They helped me envision different possible opportunities for what I might go on and do in the world. They introduced me to characters and people who were like me. They introduced me to characters and people who were not like me, which was a very important thing for any kid to see. I also read books for their language. Even from an early age, I really enjoyed the way that a writer would phrase something. How a sentence sounded, how 2 words stuck together seemed really cool. And there were times I'd have to actually set the book down and pause for a minute just to appreciate and process whatever it was that the author had done that impressed me so much. So libraries also made me a writer. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I read a lot of Irma Bombeck, and I was absolutely positively not anything close to Irma's target audience. I was a geeky 7th grader. Irma was writing about being a wife and a parent in suburbia, but I loved her essays. I loved her humor. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could write something just a tiny bit as cool as what Irma had written? And so I remember in 7th grade sitting down and trying to write an essay like Irma Bombeck. I also tried to write like screenwriter Nora Ephron and like Sports Illustrated reporter Frank DeFord. And I think a lot of writers do that. You read someone, you admire what they do, you try to sound like them. And by doing that, you end up figuring out how you can possibly sound the most like yourself. So now when I talk to kids at schools or at libraries, I tell them to read as much of anything they possibly can that they enjoy. Because every time they sit down and read, their brain is like a sponge and it's soaking up all the different words. And when they sit down to write, it's like squeezing that sponge and the words will come out and make them a better writer. So now that I'm adult, I'm still a reader, I'm still a writer, I'm still a heavy user of my local public library. When I decided that I wanted to write books for kids, the first thing I did was go to my local public library, which at the time was the Fitchburg Public Library, and I checked out as many picture books as I could by writers that I had admired. I took them home, sat down in my living room, and they were stacked up above my head. And I read all the picture books and I studied them and I learned from them. And I went and tried to write my own. Now I am a published writer and I still go back to my local public library. Now it's the Sun Prairie Public Library. And I check out books by other authors to see what are people writing, what are people saying, what's being published, what can I learn from, how can I grow? So my gratitude to the public library system knows no bounds. I think one of my favorite things about public libraries is interlibrary loan. I think it should be an 8th wonder of the world because you can walk into a public library and if they don't have the book that you need, the article that you need, the information source that you need, they can request it from another library and it will just arrive all at no cost to you, which is really, when you think about it, kind of miraculous. So I want to take time to thank all the public librarians, all the school librarians, all the academic librarians, and any other sort of librarian that spends their days making sure that kids, teenagers, adults, senior citizens can all get the information they need so they can be readers, so they can be writers, so they can be thinkers and dreamers and people who imagine all the different possibilities that the world has to offer. Thank you for what you do every day, and thank you for making public libraries and information accessible to everyone. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving.